My own daughter looked me in the eye and called me a burden. "Just another mouth to feed," she said, her voice carrying the same dismissive tone she'd use for a stray dog. I watched her push those papers across the kitchen table, the same table where I'd built her dollhouse, taught her to play chess, celebrated every milestone of her life. My hands didn't shake as I signed. They should have, but they didn't. She had no idea what she'd just done to herself. She thought she was discarding a burden. What she'd actually done was set in motion a chain of events that would soon tear her perfect little world apart, piece by piece, and I was going to enjoy watching every single moment of it. Before we continue, please subscribe to stay updated on our latest stories, and feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. Dad, I brought you those light bulbs you needed, Celeste called out as she walked through my front door, her arms loaded with grocery bags and that bright smile that had melted my heart for 37 years. I looked up from the newspaper spread across my kitchen table, feeling that familiar warmth bloom in my chest. Here she was again, my devoted daughter, taking time out of her busy schedule to help her old man. The afternoon sunlight caught her auburn hair, the same shade as her mother's, and for a moment I was transported back to when she was 8 years old, standing in this very kitchen, covered in flour after our disastrous attempt at making pancakes together. "You didn't have to drive all the way over here for that," I said, though we both knew I was grateful. At 73, I could still manage most things, but Celeste had this way of anticipating what I needed before I even realized it myself. "How much do I owe you?" "Don't be silly," she laughed, that musical sound that reminded me so much of her mother. "It's just a few bulbs. Besides, I was in the neighborhood anyway." She began unpacking the bags on my counter, and I watched her move with practiced efficiency through my kitchen. This was my daughter, the one who called every Sunday, who never missed my birthday, who had taken over handling my doctor's appointments when my memory started getting a bit foggy. The daughter who had insisted on having my mail forwarded to her address just to help organize things, who had gently suggested I might want to consider simplifying my finances by letting her manage some of my accounts. "Oh, and I picked up that tea you like," she said, pulling out a box of Earl Grey, the one Mom used to make. My throat tightened. She remembered. Of course she remembered. Celeste had always been thoughtful like that. Always. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and something flickered across her face. A look I couldn't quite place. "Sorry, Dad. I need to take this. Work stuff." "Sure, sweetheart. I'll just be—" But she was already walking toward the living room, phone pressed to her ear. "Hey," I heard her say, her voice dropping to that professional tone she used for business calls. I turned back to my newspaper, but the words seemed to blur together. Something felt different today, though I couldn't put my finger on what. Maybe it was the way she'd looked at her phone or how quickly she'd moved away from me when it rang. No, I was being paranoid. This was Celeste, my Celeste, who had never given me a moment's worry in her entire life. I tried to focus on the crossword puzzle, but after filling in 3 answers, I realized I needed to ask her about dinner plans. "Celeste?" I called out. "Honey, do you want to stay for—" No response. "Celeste?" Still nothing. The murmur of her voice carried from the living room, but I couldn't make out the words. Probably just stepped out onto the porch for better reception. I stood up, my knees protesting slightly, and walked toward the sound of her voice. "Honestly, I don't know how much longer I can keep this up," she was saying, and I paused just outside the living room doorway. Her tone was different now, sharper, more frustrated than I'd ever heard it. "He's becoming such a burden, Garrett. I mean, he can barely remember to take his medication without me checking on him every day." My blood turned to ice in my veins. I know," she continued, and I could hear her pacing now, her footsteps moving back and forth across my hardwood floors. "I've been playing the good daughter routine for months now, but it's exhausting. Every weekend it's something. Groceries, doctor appointments, fixing this, organizing that, and he just sits there, completely oblivious to how much of my life he's consuming." The newspaper I'd been holding slipped from my fingers, but I caught it before it could hit the floor. My hands were trembling now, something they hadn't done when I'd signed those papers just an hour ago. "The nursing home tour is scheduled for Thursday." Celeste's voice carried on, each word hitting me like a physical blow. Sunset Manor. I looked at their pricing, and with his pension and Social Security, we can just barely cover it. The trick is getting him to agree to go voluntarily. I've been working on it for weeks, dropping little hints about how nice it would be to have people around his own age, how he wouldn't have to worry about maintaining the house anymore. I pressed my back against the wall, my heart hammering so hard I was sure she could hear it from the next room. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be my Celeste, my devoted daughter who had just been smiling at me, who had brought me tea because she remembered it was Mom's favorite. Trust me, once he's settled in there, it'll be better for everyone, she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice now. Not the warm smile she'd given me earlier, but something colder, more calculating. I'll finally have my life back, and he'll have professional care. It's win-win, really. He just doesn't see it yet. I stood there in the hallway, feeling as though the ground had opened up beneath my feet. 47 years of marriage had taught me to recognize the sound of deception, but I had never, not once, expected to hear it from my own child. Every visit, every grocery run, every concerned phone call, it had all been performance. A carefully orchestrated campaign to ease me out of my own life. Look, I have to go, Celeste said suddenly. He's probably wondering where I am. I need to keep up appearances until everything's finalized. But Garrett, this is almost over. Just a few more weeks of pretending to care, and then we can finally move on with our lives. I heard her footsteps approaching the doorway and quickly stepped back into the kitchen, grabbing the first thing I could find, a dish towel, and began wiping down the already clean counter. By the time she appeared in the doorway, I had composed my face into what I hoped looked like casual interest. "Everything okay with work?" I asked, my voice somehow steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. "Oh, you know how it is," she said with that same bright smile, the one I now recognized as a mask. "Just some client drama, nothing I can't handle." She walked over and gave me a quick hug, and I had to force myself not to recoil from her touch. This was still my daughter, still the little girl I had raised, but she was also a stranger, someone capable of planning my exile while pretending to love me. "I should probably head home," she said, already gathering her purse. "Brad's expecting me for dinner. But I'll call you tomorrow, okay?" "Of course, sweetheart," I managed. "Drive safely." I walked her to the door, kissed her cheek, and waved goodbye as she drove away, just like I had done hundreds of times before. But this time, as I watched her taillights disappear down my street, I knew with crystal clarity that my daughter had just made the biggest mistake of her life. She thought she was playing chess while I was playing checkers. What she didn't know was that I had been playing chess longer than she'd been alive, and she had just shown me all her pieces. I stood at my kitchen window long after Celeste's car had disappeared, watching the empty street as if it might somehow provide answers to questions I didn't even know how to ask. My reflection stared back at me from the glass, a 73-year-old man who had just discovered that his entire world was built on lies. This couldn't be real. This had to be some kind of misunderstanding, some conversation taken out of context. The Celeste I knew, the daughter who had cried when we had to put down our old dog Max, who had spent her entire high school graduation speech thanking me and her mother for our sacrifices. That woman couldn't be the same person who had just coldly discussed warehousing me like an unwanted piece of furniture. But even as I tried to rationalize it away, the words kept echoing in my mind with crystalline clarity. Just a few more weeks of pretending to care. Each syllable was like a physical weight settling in my chest, making it hard to breathe. I walked through my house, the house I had bought 42 years ago, where I had carried my bride over the threshold, where we had brought Celeste home from the hospital as a squalling newborn. Every room held memories that felt suddenly poisoned. The living room where we'd watched Disney movies together when she was small. The kitchen where she'd practiced her times tables while I cooked dinner. The hallway where I'd hung her school pictures, year after year, watching her grow from gap-toothed child to confident young woman. Had any of it been real? Or had she been calculating even then, measuring my worth against what I could provide for her? My hands were shaking now, not from age, but from a rage so pure and cold it felt like ice water in my veins. Thursday. She had said Thursday. The nursing home tour was scheduled for Thursday, which meant I had less than a week before whatever papers I'd signed earlier would be put into motion. I sat down heavily in my recliner, the same chair where I'd rocked her to sleep when she was feverish, where I'd helped her with algebra homework, where I'd given her advice about boys and college and life. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was probably sitting in what Celeste already considered her property. But as the shock began to wear off, something else took its place, something sharper and more focused. If my daughter wanted to play games with my life, she was about to learn that I hadn't survived 7 decades by being naive. I had built a successful accounting practice from nothing, had navigated corporate mergers and hostile takeovers, had outmaneuvered competitors who thought an old man would be an easy target. Celeste thought she knew me, but she only knew the version of me that had been her father. Patient, generous, forgiving. She had never met the businessman who had once bankrupted a partner who tried to steal from our clients. She had never seen the man who had systematically destroyed a competitor who had tried to spread lies about my practice. I reached for my phone and dialed a number I knew by heart, even though I hadn't called it in months. Morrison, Keller and Associates, came the crisp voice of the receptionist. This is Richard Thompson. I need to speak with Harold Morrison. Tell him it's urgent. Harold had been my lawyer for 25 years, had handled everything from my business contracts to my wife's estate. More importantly, he was someone who understood that the world wasn't always a kind place, and that sometimes good people had to make hard choices. Dick? Harold's voice came on the line, carrying that familiar note of concern. Everything all right? It's been a while since I've heard from you. Harold, I need to ask you something, and I need complete honesty. I took a deep breath, still barely believing the words I was about to say. In your practice, have you ever seen cases where adult children try to force elderly parents into nursing homes against their will? There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Harold spoke again, his voice had shifted into what I recognized as his professional mode, careful, measured, completely serious. Dick, why are you asking me this? Has something happened? My daughter has been unusually helpful lately, taking over my mail, managing my finances, making doctor's appointments. Today I overheard her on the phone discussing a nursing home tour scheduled for Thursday. She was talking about getting me to agree voluntarily and mentioned my pension and Social Security would just barely cover it. The words felt strange coming out of my mouth, like I was describing someone else's life. Harold let out a long sigh. Unfortunately, this is more common than you might think. Adult children who see their aging parents as financial burdens or obstacles to their inheritance. What's her motivation here, do you think? I stared out the window at the house I'd lived in for over 4 decades. This house is worth about $400,000 now. My pension is decent, Social Security too. If I'm in a nursing home, she'd have control over everything. The house, my income, my savings. Plus, she wouldn't have to deal with the burden of caring for me anymore. And what makes you think she's planning to do this against your will? Because she was talking about pretending to care and keeping up appearances until everything was finalized. Harold, she called me a burden, said she was exhausted from playing the good daughter routine. My voice cracked slightly on those words. Jesus, Dick. I'm sorry. Harold was quiet for a moment. The financial incentive is certainly there. If she can get you declared incompetent or get power of attorney, she could sell your house, manage your income, make all your medical decisions. Some of these nursing homes cost $3,000 to $5,000 a month. She'd pocket the difference between that and your actual income. So, what's the usual playbook for something like this? They start by isolating you from other family or friends, taking control of your finances and mail, scheduling medical appointments with doctors who might support a competency evaluation. Then they either manipulate you into signing documents you don't understand, or they petition the court for guardianship claiming you can't care for yourself. My blood ran cold. The mail forwarding, the doctor appointments, she's been setting this up for months. Dick, if this is really what's happening, You need to understand, once she gets the right legal documents in place, it becomes very difficult to reverse. And if she's already scheduled that nursing home tour, what kind of timeline are we looking at? If she's moving this fast, probably days or weeks. She'll want to strike while she has momentum and before you realize what's happening. Harold paused. But Dick, you called me, which means you do realize what's happening. That gives you options. What kind of options? Well, for starters, you're clearly competent. You're having a rational conversation about a complex situation. If she tries anything legally, we can fight it. But more importantly, if you suspect she's going to try to manipulate you into signing something, we can be prepared. Prepared how? Document everything. Record conversations if it's legal in your state. Get a medical evaluation from an independent doctor proving your competency. And Dick? His voice grew harder. If she's been taking money or property under false pretenses, that's elder abuse. That's a felony. I felt something cold and sharp settling in my chest. My daughter wasn't just planning to abandon me, she was planning to rob me while doing it. Predators. The word hung in the air between us like a curse. My own daughter, the little girl I had loved more than my own life, was being described by my lawyer as a predator. There's something else, I said, my voice steadier now as the shock gave way to cold determination. If someone were hypothetically planning to fight back against this kind of manipulation, what would you advise? Harold was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, there was something almost like admiration in his voice. Hypothetically, I'd advise them to be very, very careful. But I'd also tell them that the law doesn't look kindly on elder abuse, and that sometimes the best defense is a good offense. Document everything, stay one step ahead, and remember, you're not as powerless as they want you to believe. I understand, I said. Dick? Harold's voice stopped me before I could hang up. Whatever you're planning, just remember, you're not alone in this. And if your daughter really is doing what you think she's doing, she's made a very serious mistake. People who prey on the elderly often forget that some of us got old by being smart, not lucky. After I hung up, I sat in my chair for a long time, watching the shadows lengthen across my living room floor. Celeste thought she had outsmarted me, thought she had reduced me to a confused old man who would shuffle quietly into whatever corner she had prepared for me. She was about to learn just how wrong she was. The next 3 days passed in a strange, suspended reality. Celeste called every evening, her voice bright with false concern, asking about my day, my meals, whether I'd remembered my medication. Each conversation felt like listening to an actress rehearsing lines, and I found myself analyzing every word, every pause, looking for cracks in her performance. "So, Dad, I was thinking," she said during Tuesday night's call, her tone carefully casual. "Remember how we talked about you maybe meeting some people your own age? I found this really nice community center that does activities for seniors." I gripped the phone tighter. "Community center?" "Well, it's more like a residential community. Sunset Manor. They have all sorts of programs, card games, movie nights, group meals. I thought maybe we could take a look at it together, just to see what's available." There it was, the nursing home tour she'd mentioned to Garrett, packaged now as a friendly social outing. "When were you thinking?" "Thursday afternoon. I could pick you up around 2. We could just drive by, maybe take a quick tour if you're interested. No pressure at all." "No pressure. Right. That sounds nice, sweetheart." "Great. I'm so excited for you to see it, Dad. I really think you'll love the people there." After she hung up, I sat staring at the phone. The speed of her timeline was becoming clear now. Thursday tour, probably followed immediately by paperwork. Harold's words echoed in my mind. If she's moving this fast, probably days or weeks. I spent Wednesday preparing. Called my doctor for an independent cognitive assessment, passed with flying colors. Set up a small recording device Harold had recommended. Reviewed my finances with my accountant. Every detail had to be perfect. Thursday arrived, gray and drizzly, matching my mood. Celeste picked me up right on time, her smile as bright as ever, but I could see something else lurking behind her eyes now, an eagerness she was struggling to contain. "You look good today, Dad," she said as I settled into her passenger seat. "Ready for our little adventure?" "As ready as I'll be." The drive to Sunset Manor took 20 minutes through increasingly unfamiliar neighborhoods. As we pulled into the parking lot, I noticed a man leaning against a blue sedan, checking his phone. Tall, dark hair, expensive jacket. He looked up as we approached and gave Celeste a small nod. "Who's that?" I asked. "Oh, that's just someone from the facility, staff member." But her voice had that same careful quality it had held during her phone call with Garrett. The tour itself was a masterclass in manipulation. Celeste guided me through common areas filled with elderly residents staring blankly at television screens, past tiny rooms with single beds and minimal furnishings, all while maintaining a stream of enthusiastic commentary. "Look at how clean everything is, Dad. And see how the staff is so attentive? You'd have 3 meals a day prepared for you, medication management, activities." She paused by a window overlooking a small courtyard where a few residents sat motionless in wheelchairs. "Wouldn't it be nice to not have to worry about cooking or cleaning anymore?" I watched an aide spoon feed an elderly woman who looked about my age, and something cold settled in my stomach. It's certainly comprehensive. "I know it's a big decision," Celeste said, her hand touching my arm with practiced sympathy. "But Dad, you're not getting any younger, and I worry about you being alone in that big house. What if something happened? What if you fell or forgot to turn off the stove?" Her mask was holding, but I could see the strain now. The way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes, the subtle urgency in her voice as she steered me toward the administrative office. "Actually," she said, as if the thought had just occurred to her, "since we're here, maybe we should talk to someone about the paperwork, just in case you decide this is something you'd like to pursue. It can take weeks to process applications, so it's better to get started early." The administrative office was small and sterile, with motivational posters about golden years and new beginnings covering the walls. Behind the desk sat a woman with the practiced smile of someone who specialized in difficult family conversations. "Mr. Thompson," she said warmly, "I'm Janet Morrison, the admissions coordinator. Your daughter has told me so much about you." My daughter. Past tense, as if the decision had already been made. "Janet's been so helpful," Celeste said, settling into the chair beside me. "She's prepared all the preliminary paperwork, just basic information forms, financial disclosure, that sort of thing. Nothing binding, of course. Nothing binding." Of course. Janet spread several documents across her desk with practiced efficiency. "These are just intake forms, Mr. Thompson. Standard information we need for anyone considering our community. Your daughter mentioned you might be interested in our memory care track." Memory care track. I felt my jaw tighten. "My memory is fine." "Of course it is, Dad," Celeste said quickly, her hand finding my shoulder. "But you have been a little forgetful lately. Remember last week when you couldn't find your glasses? They were on your head the whole time." A manufactured moment, I realized. Something she could point to later as evidence of cognitive decline. "These forms just help us understand your current needs," Janet continued smoothly. "Medical history, financial resources, emergency contacts. And this one here gives us permission to begin the placement process once a spot becomes available." I stared at the papers. Dense legal text, multiple signature lines, official seals. This was it, the moment Celeste had been orchestrating for months. I thought about Harold's advice, about documenting everything, about staying one step ahead. I picked up the pen. "Dad, take your time," Celeste said, but I could hear the excitement bleeding through her voice now. "Make sure you understand everything." I signed the first form, then the second. With each signature, I could feel Celeste's tension building beside me, like a predator watching prey walk into a trap. The last form was the crucial one, the placement authorization. I paused, pen hovering over the signature line, and looked up at my daughter. Her mask was slipping now, just slightly. I could see the calculation in her eyes, the barely contained triumph. I signed my name. The change was instantaneous and breathtaking. Celeste's careful smile dissolved, replaced by something cold and victorious. She straightened in her chair, her whole posture shifting from supplicant daughter to something else entirely. "Finally," she breathed, and the word carried months of suppressed frustration. The door to the office opened, and the man from the parking lot stepped inside. Up close, I could see he was younger than Celeste, maybe mid-30s, with the kind of confident swagger that came from never having been told no. "All done?" he asked, his eyes scanning the signed documents. "All done," Celeste confirmed, and I heard genuine satisfaction in her voice for the first time in months. Garrett, meet my father. Dad, this is Garrett. He's been helping me with the arrangements. Arrangements, not a staff member, not a social worker, a partner in whatever scheme they'd been cooking up. Nice to finally meet you, Dick, Garrett said, not bothering to extend his hand. Celeste has told me so much about you. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Janet Morrison was suddenly very busy shuffling papers, her professional smile faltering as she sensed the shift in dynamics. You know, Celeste said, leaning back in her chair with an expression I'd never seen before. Cold, calculating, almost cruel. I really thought this was going to be harder. I've been playing the devoted daughter for so long, I almost forgot what it felt like, to be honest. Celeste, I started, but she cut me off with a laugh that had no warmth in it. No, Dad. We're done pretending now. You signed the papers. The charade is over. She turned to Garrett with a look of pure relief. God, you have no idea how exhausting it's been. The weekly visits, the fake concern, pretending to care about his stupid stories about the good old days. Garrett leaned against the wall, clearly enjoying the moment. At least it's done now. When can we list the house? House will be on the market by next week, Celeste said matter-of-factly. His pension and Social Security will more than cover this place, and we'll pocket the rest. Plus, I won't have to waste every weekend playing nursemaid to someone who should have figured out how to take care of himself by now. I sat there, listening to them discuss my life like I was already dead, feeling something dark and cold crystallizing in my chest. This wasn't just betrayal. This was calculated cruelty from someone I had loved unconditionally for 37 years. What about Brad? I asked quietly, the question slipping out before I could stop myself. Celeste's expression flickered for just a moment, a flash of something that might have been guilt or fear. Brad doesn't need to know the details, she said quickly. He thinks you're moving here because you want to. He thinks this is all your idea. Garrett smirked. Your son-in-law's a good guy, Dick. Too good, maybe. He actually believed Celeste when she said you were asking for help finding a nice community to live in. Brad would never approve of this, I said, and I saw something shift in Celeste's face. Brad doesn't understand, she snapped, her composure cracking slightly. He's too soft-hearted. He actually thinks we should take care of you ourselves, maybe build an addition to our house or some ridiculous idea like that. He doesn't see how much of a burden you've become. So, you're lying to your own husband. I'm protecting my marriage, Celeste shot back. Brad has this fantasy that we're all going to be one big happy family, but I'm the one who has to deal with reality. I'm the one who gets the phone calls, the doctor visits, the constant worry about whether you've taken your pills or left the stove on. You know what the best part is? Celeste continued, her voice gaining momentum like she was finally free to express thoughts she'd been holding back for months. He actually made it easy. All those times he said he trusted me completely, that he knew I'd always look out for him. It was like taking candy from a baby. Celeste, I said quietly, you're my daughter. She looked at me then, and what I saw in her eyes was worse than hatred. It was complete indifference. And you're just another mouth to feed, she said, echoing the words that had started this whole nightmare. The difference is now you're somebody else's problem. I walked out of Sunset Manor that Thursday afternoon, feeling like a man who had just attended his own funeral. Celeste drove me home in silence, her mission accomplished, her mask completely discarded. She didn't even bother with goodbye pleasantries when she dropped me off, just drove away the moment I closed the car door, probably eager to celebrate with Garrett. Standing in my driveway, watching her taillights disappear, I pulled out my phone and checked the recording app. Every word, every cruel laugh, every cold calculation, it was all there. Crystal clear. Harold had been right about one thing. Sometimes the best defense was a good offense. I spent that evening reviewing the documents I'd signed, understanding now what I'd committed myself to. The placement authorization gave Sunset Manor the right to admit me once a bed became available. The financial disclosure gave them access to my pension and Social Security. The medical proxy gave Celeste the authority to make healthcare decisions on my behalf if I was deemed unable to advocate for myself. Clever girl. She'd covered all her bases, but what she didn't know was that I'd covered mine too. Friday morning, I called Harold. "It's time," I said simply. "You have everything we discussed?" Audio recording, signed documents, timeline of her financial manipulations going back 6 months, plus something extra she gave me yesterday. She's been lying to her husband about all this. Harold was quiet for a moment. "Dick, what you're describing isn't just elder abuse. If she's been accessing your accounts, redirecting your mail, making financial decisions without proper authority, we're talking about multiple felonies. And if her husband doesn't know, then their marriage is built on a lie, among other things. What do you want to do first?" I looked around my house. The house Celeste was so eager to sell, the house where I'd built a life and raised a family. "I want to make some phone calls. Can you file a petition to have those documents I signed declared invalid due to coercion and misrepresentation?" "Already drafting it. What else?" "I want to contact Brad directly. I think it's time he learned what his wife has really been up to." That afternoon, I called Brad's office. He was a veterinarian with his own practice, a genuinely kind man who had always treated me with respect and affection. When Celeste had brought him home 10 years ago, I'd been thrilled that my daughter had found someone so decent. "Mr. Thompson?" Brad's voice was warm with genuine surprise. "How are you? Celeste told me about your decision to move to that community center. I have to say, I'm really proud of you for being so proactive about your living situation." My heart clenched. This poor man had no idea what his wife had done, what she was still doing. "Brad, I need to ask you something. Did Celeste discuss this decision with you? The move to Sunset Manor?" "Oh, absolutely. She was so relieved when you brought it up. She's been worried about you living alone, but she didn't want to pressure you. When you told her you were interested in finding a community with people your own age, she was so happy that you were taking charge of your own care." When you told her you were interested, the depth of Celeste's deception was breathtaking. "Brad," I said carefully, "I think we need to talk. In person. There are some things about this situation that you need to know." "Of course. Is everything all right?" "You sound concerned." "Everything is not all right. Can you come to my house this evening? And Brad, don't mention this conversation to Celeste." There was a long pause. "Mr. Thompson, you're starting to worry me." "Good. You should be worried." Brad arrived at 7 o'clock sharp, his face creased with concern. I led him to my living room and offered him coffee, which he declined. He sat on the edge of my couch, his veterinarian's instincts clearly telling him that something was very wrong. "Brad," I began, "what I'm about to tell you is going to be difficult to hear, but I need you to listen to the entire story before you say anything." I told him everything. The overheard phone conversation, the nursing home manipulation, the signed documents, and finally I played him the recording from Thursday afternoon. As Celeste's voice filled my living room, cold, calculating, admitting to months of deception, I watched Brad's face cycle through confusion, disbelief, and finally, a kind of horrified understanding. When the recording ended, we sat in silence for several minutes. Brad's hands were shaking. "She told me you asked for her help," he finally whispered. "She said you were worried about being alone, that you specifically requested information about senior communities." "I never said any of those things. The phone calls every night, checking on you. She said you were becoming forgetful, that you'd asked her to help coordinate your care." His voice trailed off as the implications hit him. "Jesus Christ. She's been lying to me for months. About everything, as far as I can tell." Brad stood up abruptly, began pacing across my living room like a caged animal. "We had fights about this. I wanted you to come live with us, maybe convert our basement into an apartment. She kept insisting that you wanted independence, that you'd be offended if we suggested you couldn't take care of yourself." He stopped, turned to look at me with eyes full of pain. "She made me feel guilty for even bringing it up. Brad, there's more. She's been redirecting my mail to her address, taking over my financial accounts, making medical appointments without consulting me. I think she's been positioning herself to have me declared incompetent." "Why?" The word came out as a choked whisper. "Money. My house is worth $400,000. My pension and Social Security combined are more than enough to cover nursing home costs. She'd pocket the difference." Brad sank back onto the couch, his head in his hands. I don't understand. We're not struggling financially. My practice is doing well. We have savings. This isn't about need, Brad. This is about greed and convenience. She told Garrett yesterday that she was tired of playing nursemaid, tired of pretending to care. Who the hell is Garrett? I described the man from the nursing home, the way he and Celeste had celebrated together after I'd signed the documents. Brad's face grew darker with each detail. She's been planning this with someone else, someone I've never met, never even heard her mention. He looked up at me, and I could see his world reshaping itself in real time. Our entire marriage, how much of it has been lies? I don't know, son, but I think we're both about to find out. Brad was quiet for a long moment, processing everything I'd told him. When he spoke again, his voice was different, harder, more resolved. What can I do to help? Are you sure? This is going to get ugly. She's your wife. She was my wife, he corrected, and there was something final in his tone. The woman I married wouldn't be capable of this. The woman I married loved you, respected you. Whatever this isn't the person I thought I knew. I felt a surge of affection for this decent man who had just watched his world crumble and was still thinking about how to help others. There is something, I said, but it requires you to pretend you don't know any of this, at least for now. What do you need me to do? I need you to be exactly who you've always been around Celeste, supportive, trusting, believing her version of events, and I need you to pay attention to everything she does, everything she says. If she's been lying about this, she's probably been lying about other things too. Brad nodded slowly. How long? Not long. My lawyer is already working on having those documents declared invalid. Once that happens, Celeste is going to realize that her plan has failed. And when it does, what? I smiled, and I realized it was the first genuine smile I'd felt in days. When it does, Brad, we're going to watch her world fall apart exactly the way she tried to make mine fall apart. The only difference is she's going to deserve every second of it. The weekend passed with an eerie normalcy. Celeste called Saturday evening to check in, her voice artificially bright as she asked about my day, whether I was excited about my upcoming move. I played my part perfectly, confused, compliant, grateful for her guidance. Behind her words, I could hear the satisfaction of someone who believed she'd already won. What she didn't know was that Harold had filed the petition Friday afternoon, and that by Monday morning, Sunset Manor would receive official notice that all documents I'd signed were being contested on grounds of elder abuse and coercion. She also didn't know that her husband now saw her for exactly what she was. Brad called me Sunday night after Celeste had gone to bed. His voice was tight with controlled anger. "You should see her," he said quietly. "She's been looking at real estate websites all weekend, browsing houses in better neighborhoods. She told me she's been thinking we should upgrade our lifestyle once her father's affairs are settled." Those were her exact words. "Affairs are settled." Like you're already dead. How are you holding up? I keep looking at her and wondering who the hell I married. This morning she was humming while making breakfast. Actually humming, like she didn't have a care in the world. His voice cracked slightly. I found a notebook in her desk. She's been planning this for months, Dick. Detailed timeline, contact information for real estate agents, even research on how long it takes to process property sales. I felt that familiar cold rage building in my chest. Anything else? Phone numbers I don't recognize, including someone named Garrett. A pause. I think I'm going to call in sick tomorrow and do some investigating. Monday morning arrived gray and cold, matching my mood. At exactly 9:47 a.m., my phone rang. Celeste's number, but when I answered, the voice was Garrett's, and he was furious. "What the hell did you do?" he demanded without preamble. "I'm sorry. Who is this?" "Don't play games, old man. We just got a call from Sunset Manor. They're saying there's some kind of legal challenge to your admission papers, that everything's on hold pending a court review." I let a beat of silence pass, allowing him to stew in his anxiety. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Like hell you don't. This has your fingerprints all over it. Did you call a lawyer? Did you?" "Let me speak to my daughter," I said calmly. I heard muffled conversation in the background, then Celeste's voice came on the line. The artificial sweetness was completely gone now. replaced by something sharp and dangerous. Dad, what's going on? We're getting calls about problems with your admission. Did you talk to someone about changing your mind? Celeste, I signed those papers just like you asked. I don't understand what the problem could be. Don't lie to me. Her voice was ice cold now. Someone contacted a lawyer. Someone filed papers with the court. The nursing home is saying they can't process your admission until this gets resolved. Maybe there was some kind of misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, she exploded, her careful facade finally cracking completely. You're trying to sabotage this, aren't you? After everything I've done for you, after all the time I've wasted playing the devoted daughter, you're going to screw this up. There it was. The real Celeste, the one she'd been hiding for months. I found myself almost admiring her consistency. I don't know what you want me to say, sweetheart. I want you to call your lawyer and withdraw whatever complaint you filed. I want you to fix this mess. What lawyer? Don't insult my intelligence. Nobody files court petitions by accident. You hired someone and now you're going to unhire them. I was quiet for a moment, letting her desperation build. And if I don't? The silence on the other end was profound. When she spoke again, her voice carried a threat that made my blood run cold. Then maybe your living situation becomes a lot more complicated. Maybe I start making some phone calls to Adult Protective Services about an elderly man living alone who's becoming increasingly paranoid and combative. Maybe I share some concerns about your mental state with Dr. Peterson. Dr. Peterson, my family physician, who Celeste had been attending appointments with for months. My stomach dropped as I realized how deep her manipulation had gone. You've been planning this for a long time, I said, longer than you know, and I have backup plans for my backup plans. So I suggest you think very carefully about what you want to do next. The line went dead. I sat staring at my phone, understanding finally that this wasn't just about greed or convenience. This was about control. Celeste didn't just want my money. She wanted my complete capitulation. She wanted me to thank her for destroying my life. My phone rang again. Harold. Dick, we've got a problem. What kind of problem? I just got a call from someone claiming to be your daughter's attorney. Very aggressive, very well prepared. They're threatening to file a counter petition claiming you're mentally incompetent and that your legal challenge is evidence of declining cognitive function. Can they do that? They can try. And if they have medical documentation suggesting cognitive decline. He trailed off. Dick, have you been seeing a doctor regularly? Someone your daughter has access to? Dr. Peterson. Celeste had been attending my appointments, taking notes, asking pointed questions about my memory, my decision-making capabilities. She'd been building a case for months. Harold, they're going to claim I'm not competent to challenge my own documents. That's exactly what they're going to claim. It's actually a brilliant strategy. Use your attempt to fight back as evidence that you're not capable of making rational decisions. I felt the walls closing in. Celeste hadn't just been planning to warehouse me. She'd been planning to completely destroy my legal standing. If she succeeded in having me declared incompetent, I'd lose everything. My house, my finances, my freedom, even my right to make my own medical decisions. What are our options? We fight fire with fire. I'm calling in some favors. Getting you an independent psychiatric evaluation from someone they can't influence. We document everything they've done, every lie they've told, every manipulation they've attempted. And Dick? Yeah? We go nuclear. No more playing defense. If your daughter wants to destroy your life, we make sure she loses everything in the process. I thought about Brad, about the notebook full of planning, about the months of calculated deception. I thought about Celeste humming while she planned my exile, shopping for houses with money she planned to steal from me. Do it, I said. All of it. Dick, once we start down this path, there's no going back. Are you sure? I looked around my living room at the photos of Celeste as a child, the Father's Day cards she'd made me over the years, the memories of a daughter who had apparently never existed. Harold, I said, she started this war. Now let's finish it. Tuesday morning, everything came to a head. I was sitting in my kitchen, reading the newspaper and waiting for Harold's call, when I heard a car door slam in my driveway. Through the window, I saw Celeste storming toward my front door, her face twisted with rage. Behind her, Garrett followed at a more cautious distance. She didn't bother knocking. The front door burst open and she marched into my kitchen like she owned the place, which I supposed she thought she did. "Enough," she said, slamming her purse down on my table. "This ends today." I folded my newspaper carefully, taking my time. "Good morning, Celeste. You look upset." "Don't." Her voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "Don't sit there and pretend you don't know exactly what you've done. That lawyer of yours filed a motion yesterday claiming I've been manipulating you. They're asking for a full investigation into my finances, my communications, everything." Garrett appeared in the doorway, his earlier confidence replaced by something that looked suspiciously like fear. "Mr. Thompson, we need to talk. This situation has gotten out of hand." "Has it?" I leaned back in my chair, studying them both. "I'm just an old man who signed some papers. What situation could there possibly be?" Celeste's composure snapped completely. "You recorded us," she screamed. "At the nursing home. You recorded our conversation and gave it to your lawyer." I blinked innocently. "I don't know what you mean." "The hell you don't. They played it back to us yesterday. Every word, every detail. You recorded us admitting to... She stopped, realizing she was about to confess to crimes in front of a witness. "Admitting to what, sweetheart?" Her hands were shaking now, with rage or fear or both. "You can't use that recording. It's illegal. You didn't have our consent." "Actually," I said calmly, "in this state, only one party needs to consent to record a conversation. Since I was part of that conversation, the recording is perfectly legal." Garrett stepped forward, his face pale. "Look, maybe we can work something out. Nobody needs to get hurt here." Hurt, I stood up slowly, feeling my full height for the first time in months. "Garrett, the only person who's been getting hurt here is me. But that's about to change." "What do you want?" Celeste demanded. "Money? Fine, I'll give you money. Just call off your lawyer and withdraw your complaint." "What I want," I said, walking to my kitchen drawer and pulling out a manila folder, "is for you to understand exactly how thoroughly you've destroyed your own life." I opened the folder and spread its contents across the table. Bank statements, phone records, email printouts, legal documents. Celeste's face went white as she recognized what she was looking at. "Brad's been very helpful," I said conversationally. "Amazing what a husband can access when he puts his mind to it. Did you know he found your secret bank account? The one where you've been depositing money transferred from my accounts?" "Those were legitimate," she started. "Embezzlement," I interrupted. 8 months of systematic theft, documented down to the penny. That's a felony, Celeste." Garrett was backing toward the door now. "I don't know anything about stolen money. This was just about helping with elder care arrangements." "Oh, Garrett," I pulled out another set of documents. "You really should be more careful about your text messages, especially the ones where you and my daughter discuss splitting the proceeds from selling my house." His face went gray. "Those messages, how did you..." Brad again. "Turns out when you're married to someone, you have access to their phone records. Amazing what modern technology can reveal about criminal conspiracies." Celeste was staring at the documents like they were poisonous snakes. This can't be legal. Brad can't just spy on me." "He can when he's protecting the victim of a crime," I said. "And that's exactly what this is. A crime. Multiple crimes, actually. Elder abuse, financial exploitation, fraud, conspiracy, and depending on how you want to interpret your medical manipulations, possibly attempted false imprisonment." I walked to the window and looked out at my quiet street, the neighborhood where I'd lived for over 40 years. "The really beautiful part is that you did all the work for us. The detailed planning, the paper trail, the recorded admissions of guilt. You built your own case against yourself. Dad, please." Celeste's voice cracked, and for a moment she sounded like the little girl who used to ask me to check for monsters under her bed. "Don't." The word came out sharper than I intended. "Don't call me that. Don't you dare call me that after what you've done." I turned back to face them both. "Here's what's going to happen. In about 10 minutes, Detective Reynolds from the Elder Abuse Unit is going to arrive here to take your statements. Harold has already submitted our evidence to the district attorney's office. They're very interested in prosecuting what they're calling one of the most systematic cases of elder abuse they've seen this year." Celeste's legs seemed to give out. She sank into one of my kitchen chairs, her face the color of ash. "This will destroy me. my job, my reputation, my marriage. Your marriage was already over the moment Brad learned what you really are, I said coldly. He filed for divorce yesterday. He's also pressing charges for fraud. Apparently, some of the money you stole from me was used to pay down the mortgage on your house. That makes him an unwitting victim, too. Garrett was at the door now, his hand on the handle. I'm leaving. This is insane. I was just helping a friend. Oh, you're not going anywhere, I said pleasantly. There's a police car parked at the end of my street. They've been there since 6 this morning, waiting for you to show up. Amazing how predictable you both are. As if on cue, I heard car doors slamming outside. Through the window, I could see 2 uniformed officers walking up my driveway. Celeste looked up at me with tears streaming down her face, but I felt no sympathy. These weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of a predator who had finally been caught. I'm your daughter, she whispered. I'm your only child. You're destroying your own family. I stared down at her, this stranger who shared my DNA but none of my values, and felt something final click into place in my chest. No, I said quietly. You destroyed this family the moment you decided I was nothing more than a bank account to be looted. I'm just cleaning up the mess you made. The doorbell rang. Detective Reynolds had arrived. The difference between us, Celeste, I said as I walked to answer the door, is that when I destroy someone's life, they actually deserve it. I opened the door to let the police in, and behind me, I heard my daughter, my former daughter, begin to sob. It was the sound of someone who had finally realized that actions have consequences, and that sometimes those consequences are exactly what you deserve. The game was over, and I had won.